Alrighty, so welcome to Running Start Orientation. We're going to start off with a few introductions. Today we're going to be going over a lot of information. So feel free at the end to ask questions or ask questions in the chat as we're going through the presentation. And so Angela, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I am Angela Riviere. I am the Associate Director of the Running Start program. So I oversee advising and admissions and the day-to-day aspects of Running Start. I think most all of you have met me already, and you will see me quarterly probably for advising. And thanks for being here.
And my name is Grace Pearson. So I'm one of the advisors at the Running Start office. So every quarter, you're either going to meet with me or Angela and discuss classes of what you're going to be taking for the next quarter. And we are always here to help you whenever we can. That's back when I used to be a blonde. I'm a brunette now. And then Skyler.
Hi, everyone. I'm Skyler. I am a senior here at CWU. I was a part of the program for 2 years, and now I get to be a peer mentor. You'll see me manning the front desk or calling you about advising or other things that are important. I also help plan fun events and also manage a lot of our socials. So if you have ideas for fun events, I'd love to hear them, and I look forward to working with you guys this quarter.
Awesome. And then we also have Emma Nelson. She's not here today, but she is also a peer mentor and office assistant. So occasionally you'll get calls from her. She's going to be leading one of the in-person tours here coming up, and Skylar is going to be doing that as well. And we also have Nick Jewell. He's also not here today, but another peer mentor. So you'll see him at the front desk. Feel free to ask any of the peer mentors questions if you ever come into the office at some point. If you ever have to come in, they'll be at the front desk there if you have any questions, and they'll get you connected to one of us as well. And so on the agenda today, we have a lot to cover. We're going to be covering some of the COVID policies. We're going to be talking about some of the programs you're going to be using, like MyCW, your student email, everything like that. And we're also going to be talking about some of the things that are really important to know, like the kinds of forms you're going to need to turn in, as well as academic standards. So starting off with COVID policies, we do have COVID policies in place to protect everybody on campus. So as of right now, everybody is required to wear a mask while indoors. And so that is something to keep in mind if you have in-person classes, is that you will have to wear a mask whenever you are inside of a CW building. And that is going to be at least until October 18th. Everything is constantly changing, so be sure to keep an eye on your CW email as they are sending out new guidelines throughout the quarter. Most of them are sent by the CW president, and you can also go and check on this link right here. This PowerPoint has been sent out to all of you, so you have access to all of these links, and you can go and view the COVID-19 policies and updates on this website. There are some vaccination requirements as well. If you have a religious or a medical exemption, you can fill out the forms. That has to be turned in before October 18th. So if you are unable to get vaccinated, you will have to turn in those forms before the 18th. Everybody else is required to get vaccinated to take in-person classes. So that is something that you will have to do to be in person at the CW campus. All of those requirements and everything can be found at this link here. And something else to know is that us as the Running Start staff know as much as you do. All of the information that we know, we will share with you. So you should be getting either messages forwarded by me or Angela or messages directly from the president. So we don't have any other extra information that we are keeping from you. Anything that we know, we will automatically share that with you so that you can be up to date on everything that is going on campus, especially relating to COVID-19 policies. And then now for your MyCW account. So these accounts are really important. This is how you sign up for classes. So most of you have already set up your MyCW account because that is how you got enrolled in your fall quarter classes. But MyCW is not only for signing up for classes, that is also how you can view your class schedule. That is how you're going to be able to check your grades at the end of the quarter and how you pay your bills. So it's super important. And you can also access your Canvas and email through there as well. So knowing your MyCW account information is going to be critical, because getting into MyCW on any computer on campus, logging in anywhere that you're going to need to go, that is going to be your MyCW password and login information. And so knowing that is super important. And for advising, you're always going to be having to log into your MyCW account to sign up for classes. And so a little bit later, if you stick around after orientation, Skylar is going to be going through the MyCW account and what that looks like, but we're going to get a little bit of a preview right now. And so as you can see on this page, we have this section right here, which is your class schedule. And so you can see the modality of your class. So these ones are online and don't have specific classes or specific times that those ones are going to be at. And then this class down here does have specific times and also tells you the building that it's going to be in. So you're going to want to look at your class schedule before you start fall quarter classes to make sure that you know where your classes are, the times that they're going to be, and if they're going to be online or in person. You can see that the class is English 102 and the section here. If you order textbooks online, it's going to be important to know which section your class is in. So that's this 3-digit thing right here. If you look over on this side, this is where your holds are going to be. You're going to have a hold every single quarter that's a running start hold to make sure that you do advising each quarter. And so that will be on there, and you will not be able to enroll for classes until you do advising. And then over here, we have enrollment dates. This is when you're going to know when you can enroll for classes. And so that is going to have a specific date on there. Say it's November 1st. And so if that says November 1st, that's going to be the day that you can enroll. If you click on the blue link, there is going to be a specific time that you can enroll in classes. So maybe it'll be November 1st at 6 a.m. Everybody has a different enrollment date. So it's important to know what your personal one is so that when classes are opening up, you know which day that you can enroll. If you look over here, this is where you're going to be seeing the program advisor. So this is going to be Angela for all of you. And so if you ever forget who your advisor is, you can come here and you can find her name. That way you can email her, get into contact with her if you need to. If you look down here, this is where fees are going to show up. So this one says you have no outstanding charges at this time. That is what it will say when you don't have any bills to pay. When you do have a bill, it will show up here and it will show you the exact amount that you have due that quarter. There are fees each quarter that we'll talk about in a little bit. And to make a payment over here, there's that blue button that says make a payment. You can do an online check, you can pay with your credit card, or you can even pay in person if you go to their building. And then next up, we have your MyCW email. This is super, super important to check every single day, and you're going to want to start checking that now because things are constantly changing, especially with COVID-19. And so new updates and new guidelines are always coming out. So make sure that you're checking your CW email every single day. Most of you will have your last name and then part of your first name as your CW login. It's going to be your whatever your username is for MyCW. It's going to be the same thing, but added at cw.edu, and it's going to have the exact same password as you have for your MyCW account. Your CW email is how your professors, how anybody on campus is going to be contacting you. And so say a class is canceled and you don't check your email that day. You might show up to class and nobody's there and you don't know why. But if you checked your email that morning, you know that the professor sent out to everybody that the class was canceled. And so it's really important that you're checking that every single day, especially before you go to class, just to make sure that the class is still going to be meeting that day. You're still going to be meeting in person. And also in case there's any updates that you need to know. We will also send you emails about advising and different things like that. And so emails from our office from now on are going to be going to your CW email. So make sure that you're checking that every single day, especially once the quarter starts. And then moving on to Canvas, this is going to be pretty similar to Google Classroom if you've ever used that before. This is where most quizzes are taken, a lot of your exams, as well as where you're going to be turning in a lot of your papers as well. And so this is a really important tool. It's going to have the same login as MyCW. If you log into MyCW, you can access Canvas and your email directly from there. For Canvas, it has a calendar on there. That's where it's going to have files like different readings you're going to need for your classes and things like that. So make sure that you have access to a computer because it doesn't work super well on a tablet. You can get it to work, but especially for taking exams, you're going to want to be taking that on a computer. There are computers available for you to use for free on campus that you can check out at 2-hour periods in the circ and in the library. And you can also use some of the desktop computers for any amount of time that are located in several of the buildings on campus. So Canvas has a calendar on there where you can look and see what's due in your classes. You can also access the syllabus from there. And some people also message through Canvas. So if you're trying to get a hold of a classmate or trying to get a hold of your professor, sometimes they will use Canvas, but most often they will use the email. But just keep that in mind that there's a messaging section on Canvas that you might get emails or little messages through there from time to time. And then this link is a resource for a lot of learning basics for students. It's going to say which browsers work best for taking tests, different things that you can download to help you as a student. So if you have time after the presentation to take a look through this link, that'll have a lot of great resources for you. And then moving on to fees, there are a couple of fees that you're going to be responsible for every single quarter. So every quarter, there is a $25 multimodal fee. There is a $3 per credit up to 10 credits. So it maxes out at 10 credits that you'll take. So it'll be around $30 for a technology fee per quarter. And then there's a $10 library fee. That one, we're not 100% sure if that's being charged to Running Start students or not, but go ahead and plan for that, that's going to be every quarter as well. So these are all fees that you're going to have to pay for fall, winter, and spring. This is a lot cheaper than tuition. So although it might seem like a little bit of money, this is going to be way cheaper than taking any college class as a matriculated student because tuition is completely free, but they do have you pay for these fees because this counts for things like the service desk. Most of you use the service desk when you were signing up for your MyCW account to get in there. They can also help you with things like if your computer dies or something horrible happens to where you can't get into your account. They will be able to help you with that. So this fee just helps to cover those costs so that you are able to be successful here as a student. And then you can pay for those fees in your MyCW account where I showed you in that billing section earlier. And then now on to textbooks. You are responsible for paying for your textbooks. If you go to the Wildcat shop or Google search CW bookstore, you'll be able to order your textbooks online. You can also order them in person. If you go in and you have your student ID card, they can scan your card and they will print out a receipt and you can get your books in person as well. Most books are going to be a mix between ebooks and hard copy books. And so if there's an inclusive access textbook, that is automatically charged to your student account. There's no way to intercept that. That book just goes onto your account and it's an online book that typically has quizzes and things like that built into the textbook. That is a big part of the class. You will also be getting ebooks and some hard copy books as well, where there's not a choice to get either or. Sometimes you can get an ebook or a hard copy book, and that would just be up to the professor and what they have available for their course. You don't necessarily have to get all of your textbooks at the Wildcat shop. You can get them on Amazon or eBay if it's cheaper. Just make sure that you're getting the right edition of the book and that it's not a book that's only available at the Wildcat shop, because there are certain things like course packs where you can only get at the Wildcat shop itself. If you are having a hard time paying for textbooks, you are qualified for free or reduced lunch at your high school, your family receives public assistance or unemployment, or you are a foster youth, you can apply to the book loan program and we can help you pay for some of your books. We can mostly pay for some of the hard copy books because we like to reuse them so that the next quarter a new student can borrow those books as well. And so if it's an inclusive access textbook, we can't get that since that's automatically charged to your account. And there's a couple other exceptions as well. But if you turn in the form that is on the Running Start website, that is the form that will help us to be able to know that you want help buying some of your books if you need them. And we can hopefully get 1 or 2 books for you for the quarter that you are participating in. If you filled out the testing fee and waiver option when we helped you pay for a test, that is the exact same form. So just go ahead and send us an email letting us know that you want to also participate in the book loan program and we can put you on the list. And then the CW library has a lot of great options. This is on campus. This is not the Ellensburg Public Library. This is the library that is on the CW campus. They have a lot of great resources, and you can also sometimes find the textbooks that you need at the library and borrow it for part of the quarter if you were unable to buy it. They also have a lot of online resources where you can find as well. They have tutoring in the library, which is an awesome resource. It's totally free. You can go in and get help with writing or math. And let me just say that tutoring is an awesome option. I used it a lot when I was getting my undergrad and I graduated with a really high GPA, and that's mostly because I went to tutoring. And so it's a really great program if you have any problems with writing or even just want to get a second pair of eyes on your math homework or whatever you're doing in any of your classes. It's a really great resource. They also have librarians per college. And so if there is a history class that you're taking and you wanted to talk to a history librarian to help them find sources for your papers and things like that, you can go and you can find the librarian that can help with that. And so that is a really great option as well. There's also different tutoring options there online and in person. And there's just a lot of great things there. They also have events at the library where there is one that's my favorite one where they bring in a bunch of service dogs and you can play with a bunch of dogs during finals week. So keep in mind that there are a lot of events on campus that you might be able to participate in, either at the library or somewhere else. And then if you have a 504 or IEP at your high school, those do not automatically transfer to the university. And so you'll want to make sure that you are filling out a form with disability services. Parents, you can help your students fill out this form if they need help or want help with this, or students, you can fill it out by yourself if you'd like to. We do recommend that you, if you have accommodations at your high school, that you sign up for accommodations here, because we have some students that want to kind of try it out and see if they need their accommodations. And then by the time that they find out, oh, maybe they do need extra time on a test, it's too late to get all of the paperwork in for that quarter, because the paperwork can be a little bit of a lengthy process depending on what the accommodations are, and they get really, really busy mid-quarter. And so if you're able to sign up for them at the beginning of the quarter and then you find out that you don't need them, that is better than finding out that you need them midway through the quarter and then you don't have them. And so making sure that you are signing up with disability services, if you have any accommodations that you want to get transferred to the university, that would be great. And they are located in Hogue Hall if you needed to go in person, but they're going to have you fill out the online form for that, for getting accommodations at the university. And then, as I mentioned a little bit earlier before, the library offers free tutoring. And so this is for a variety of a lot of different subjects. The main ones that are for in person are going to be English and math, or writing and math. You can bring in any paper that you're writing for any class, and they will help you go through that paper and help you to hopefully get a better grade on that when you turn it in. Their math tutors are from Math 101 all the way up through calculus and higher. And so if you are wanting to go through and bring in your homework and kind of ask what's going on in that, they can help you from there. There's also tutors for classes like chemistry and some of the harder classes in business and things like that as well. And so there's a lot of different subjects you can choose from. The ones that are offered at Central are a little bit more limited, but there is an online one that you can use this for the whole Pacific Northwest. And that is open almost 24 hours a day. You can do things through chat, tutoring through chat, or you can do like a Zoom meeting and they will help you go through your assignments. And that's almost 24 hours a day, which is awesome. And there is a lot more variety for subjects as well. So that one will have things like Spanish and Korean and a bunch of different classes that you might need tutoring in as well, which is a great opportunity, and it's totally free. And then Skylar, I'm going to have you talk about the peer mentors here really quick.
Perfect. So yeah, as a Running Start peer mentor, we are here to help and support you, as well as provide you with fun and entertaining events. And we also manage socials where you can get updates on what we're planning on doing, as well as other important information. And that information is on the screen there. We really enjoy providing a fun student space for our Running Start students where you guys can meet and have your own little community here. And as I said before, we're always here to support you. So if you have a question about different resources or about different programs, between all of us peer mentors, we have quite a lot of experience with different parts of campus. So you can ask us about almost anything about student life.
Awesome, thank you. And we also, like she said, have some social media like Instagram and Facebook. And so on here, if you go and follow those, that's going to have really important dates and events that are going on. And so that we might talk about registrations on there, when you can sign up for classes, when final exams are. So make sure you follow those if you have access to those social media platforms. We also have a YouTube where we have a lot of tutorials on things like how to sign up for classes, how to email your professors if you need help with that, amongst like almost, there's so many videos on there that are super helpful for students that will be really helpful for you. If you have any questions on things, feel free to go to the YouTube and see if there's a video on there. It shows you how to use the mobile app for MyCW and everything like that as well. And then on to Running Start advising. There is a really important form called the Running Start Enrollment Verification Form, or the RSEVF form. This form has to be turned in every single quarter. It is signed by your high school counselor, by your parent or guardian, by you yourself, and also by our office. And this form is important because it ensures that you do not have to pay for tuition. And it also helps us to share your grades with your high school. So if we don't have that form, we can't share your grades with your high school, which means that you won't graduate. And so this form is really important to have in every quarter because it protects you as a student to make sure that you will have your classes shared with your high school, and also that you don't have to pay for tuition. So the reason that we ask that this is in before the quarter starts every single quarter and as you come in for advising is it also tells us how many credits you can take at the university. So say you're taking 1 or 2 classes at your high school and you're only eligible to take 10 credits at Central. If you sign up for 15 credits, you would be asked to pay for the 5 extra credits that you signed up for because your high school only approved you to take 10. If you have that form all filled out by your high school counselor when you come in for advising, we will know that you can only take 10 credits and won't sign you up for more than you're eligible to take so that you don't have to pay for tuition. So it's a really useful form, both for us to know how to help you through advising and both for you to protect you as a student to make sure that you don't have to pay for tuition and also that you can graduate from high school. For advising, you do have to meet with your Running Start advisor every single quarter. You will have a hold on your account until you meet with us. And so it is required to meet with us each quarter so that we can help to make sure that you're on track for graduation and also helping you take classes that make sense for you. If you wanted to go to a different university after Running Start, say you wanted to go to UW and do their pre-medicine program there, we can help you find classes here that will work for prerequisites to get you hopefully into that university there to get you a head start on some of their prereqs so that you would have a better opportunity to get into that school and to do well in that program. If you want to talk about anything with career goals or school goals of where you might want to go, there's a couple students that want to go to Ivy League schools. Feel free to come and talk to us so that we can help you to get on the right track for that, help you to get started on some of your letters that you might have to write to get in there and applications. We are always happy to help in any way that we can. So our Running Start office is not only for just advising for quarter per quarter, we can also talk to you about different things about school, of where you want to go in the future, and also how school is going now. So if you are having a hard time in a class, feel free to come in and talk to us because we're there to help you and we want to help to solve any problems that are on that you were going through that quarter. So say you don't know how to send an email to your professor to ask for an extension. You could come into our office and we could help you draft up that email to send to your professor to kind of teach you how to send a professional email if you needed help with that. So we are always happy to help in any way that we can. Right now, we are doing all advising on Zoom or Teams, and you can sign up for appointments online. If you wanted to do an appointment that is not strictly for advising, you can just write in the notes that you are signing up to talk about something else that is not directly related to advising. And so feel free to sign up for appointments as you want to meet with us. We are always happy to meet with you and always happy to help. And then for picking classes, the high school equivalency guide is going to be very important because each high school has completely different requirements. And so say you are going to Ellensburg High School and your friend is going to Kittitas High School, you're going to have different requirements for what you have to take in order to graduate. So say at Kittitas for math, they have to take pre-calculus in order to graduate from high school. At Ellensburg High School, you can take Math 101 or you can take a bunch of different math classes that are available at Central. And so if you go to Kittitas, if you take Math 101, that will not count for you to graduate from high school. You have to take the pre-calculus class. And so it's going to be different depending on the high school that you go to. So if you click on this link here after the presentation, you can see the different equivalency guides for your high school. So if you went to Clay Elum Roslin, you can click on your equivalency guide and you can see the requirements that you have. You can see what they need for history, for biology, or for sciences, and for world language. All of that stuff will be on there so that you can know when you come and meet with us the kinds of classes that you're going to have to take. Make sure you're not just taking your friend's word for it, especially if they go to a different high school from you, because there are going to be different requirements. So you may want to take a history class with your friend, but you may not need the same history class. So make sure you're talking to your high school counselor and also with our office so that we can ensure that you're taking the requirements that you need to graduate on time. And then for academic standards, you do have to keep your GPA above a 2.0 as long as you are in the program. And so a 2.0 is for the university standard for good standing. If it falls below a 2.0, you would be placed on academic probation, which means that you would have to meet with the Running Start office on a regular basis, and we would coach you through that quarter, which means that we might be talking about study skills, different ways to talk to your professors, different ways to go about the class so that you can be successful the next quarter. Because if your GPA falls below a 2.0 for consecutive quarters, that means that you would be suspended from the university and would have to go back to the high school. You can appeal for suspensions. That is not done directly with our office. So that is determined by someone else at the university if that suspension is going to be accepted or denied. And so make sure that if that does happen, that you know how to fill out the paperwork and things like that. Let me just say that it is incredibly rare for students to be suspended from this program. Most of our students do incredibly well. Our average last year was around a 3.4 GPA, which is super high and actually higher than the regular students that go to CWU. So running students usually outperform the students that are considered like college freshmen or around there. They outperform them typically, and they do really, really well in this program. There's only a few students that fall below academic standards, and we will do our best to help them get back up to a good standing within the university by meeting with them either weekly or every other week to hopefully get you back on track and back into good standing with the university. The reason that they would suspend you if you fall below a 2.0 for consecutive quarters is to protect you as a student, because right now you are in high school and you're taking college classes. This college transcript will follow you for the rest of your life. This is a real deal. It's not going to disappear someday. And so these are college classes, and this is your college transcript. So if you're in high school and you're taking these classes and you say you fail 2 quarters in a row, that is not going to look very good on your college transcript. And so they don't want that to continue to happen, because they want you to be able to get into another university at some point if you choose to continue your college career after you graduate from high school. So it's partially to protect you. That being said, there are some times when things happen in our lives where school becomes less important. There might be a family emergency, there might be something else that comes up that you have to focus your time on that is more important than school. I had one student that their GPA fell below a 2.0, and they were on academic probation. And when I talked to them, they said that there was all this stuff happening in their personal life and they just really couldn't focus on school that quarter. And that's what happened. We worked together that whole quarter. By the next quarter, she had straight A's in all of her classes. So it wasn't that the student couldn't do the work, that they were not smart enough to do the work. It was just that other things were going on in their life that were more important than school at that point in time. Once they were able to focus on school again, they were a great student, they got straight A's, and they were able to get back on track. And so keep in mind that if you do, for whatever reason, maybe not do super well in one quarter, that does not mean that you are not smart, that you can't do the program, that you can't do college. It might just be that other things are going on in your life and you might just need an extra help that quarter to get back on track.
Grace, can I jump in for just a second?
Yeah.
So just to clarify, if you're suspended for having a GPA below a 2.0 for a second quarter, you're not suspended from the university, you're suspended from the Running Start program. So to be suspended from the university, you have to have a GPA below 2.0 for 3 quarters. And Running Start standards are a little bit stricter because we want to make sure that you're going to be in a position where you're going to graduate on time and that you're not going to have multiple quarters of less than passing grades on your transcript. So 2.0, you're good standing. If your GPA falls below a 2.0, you're on probation for the Running Start program. If you have a second quarter of your GPA falling below a 2.0, you are suspended from Running Start, and you can appeal to the Running Start office to see whether you can be reinstated or not. And then if you're reinstated, if you have a third quarter where you have a GPA below a 2.0, that's when you would be suspended from the university and you would have to appeal to the university to be reinstated.
Awesome, thank you. And then going on to parent access to records, it is going to be a lot different from the high school. So according to the Family Educational Right to Privacy Act, or FERPA, this is what we are held to the standard of. So once your student is accepted into the Running Start program, they're considered a full college student. And so this means that we are not able to share certain records with you. So we cannot share their grades. We can't tell you if they're going to their classes or not. For one thing, we don't know their grades throughout the quarter. We only get final grades. And we also don't know if they're going to class or not, because that is not something that is shared with our office. And so we might not be able to share these records with you, and no one on campus is going to be able to either, because those are considered private records for that specific student. They are able to fill out a release of information form that can give you access to certain records, such as grades or billing or anything like that. That is something that they can fill out so that you can get access to specific records, but that only goes so far and will still be private records that you will not have access to. That does not mean that if you call our office that we will not try to help you. We will try to be as helpful as we can, but there may be times where we would just have to answer with, "I'm sorry, the records are private and I'm not able to share that information with you." That being said, we are able to share information with the high school. So if there is any information that we think is pertinent that you guys know or that the high school knows, we will communicate that with them. And we are able to do that because we have the Running Start enrollment verification form. That form lets us know that we can communicate with the high school and share grades and share anything that we know that is going on with the student on campus. And the high school will then be able to relay that information on to you. And so if there's something that you wanted to know, you could first contact the high school to see if they know. And then you can contact our office and we will try and be as helpful as we can, but we are not able to share certain records. And then for important dates on campus, on September 22nd, that is the first day of classes. So you will want to make sure that your schedule is finalized before then, that you have your textbooks ready to go, and that you know which rooms your classes are going to be in before then so that you don't get lost on the first day of school. So that is going to be the first day, which is coming up here pretty quickly. And you'll notice that the schedule for the university is a lot different from the high school. So if you're a part-time student, your schedule for taking central classes is going to be a little bit different from taking high school classes. So the first day for us is going to be on the 22nd of September. And then on September 28th, this is when you can, the last time that you can change your schedule for the quarter. So you'll have your schedule for the 22nd. Within the days between the 22nd and the 28th, you can change your schedule for any reason. So it might be that you are taking more classes than you were ready to take. You might be taking 3 classes when really you think you only want to take 2. You can drop one of those classes and it'll be as if you never took it. It won't show up on your transcript. It won't show up anywhere. It'll just be as if you were never enrolled in the class. And then you can bump up down from 3 classes to 2 classes. You might find that you actually want to be full-time. And if it's okay with your high school, you can switch up from maybe 1 class to 3 classes, but you would have to approve that with your high school. And you can add those classes as long as it's before the 28th. You can also change classes in your schedule. So say you're taking a science class and you wanted to take biology, but you change your mind and you actually really want to take chemistry. You can change your classes all the way up through the 28th. So between the 22nd and 28th, you can change your schedule for any reason as long as the class is still open that you are wanting to change into. If you wanted to change your schedule, please feel free to contact our office and we will help you through that process of swapping, dropping, or adding classes. Make sure that that is done before the 28th because after the 28th, things change a little bit. And fees are also due on the 28th of September. So make sure that those are turned in on time. Otherwise, you'll start to accrue late fees. And so make sure that all of your fees and bills are paid by the 28th. On November 8th, that is the uncontested withdrawal deadline. And so on the 8th, that means that after that, you will not be able to withdraw for any reason. Before November 8th or on the 8th, you can withdraw from a class for any reason. Maybe you are getting a grade that you're not going to be very happy with at the end of the quarter. You can withdraw from that class and you'll just get a W on your transcript that will not negatively impact your GPA. And so you can withdraw for any reason. Maybe you don't like your professor and you don't want to be in that class anymore. That's fine. You can withdraw from that class. You can just come into our office or contact our office and we will help you throughout that process. We will not be in trouble with our office if you want to withdraw from a class. We want what's best for you and what's going to be best for you in your education and what's going to be best for you that quarter. And so if you want to withdraw from a class, you're not going to be in trouble with us. So we're going to ask you maybe why you want to withdraw from the class so we kind of know what's going on and then help you out throughout that process. December 3rd is the last day of classes. You still have exams after the 3rd, but the last day of lecturing and classes is going to be on the 3rd of December. This is also the last day to do a hardship withdrawal or a complete withdrawal. And so this is a little bit different. The complete withdrawal is kind of an all or nothing thing. On the November 8th, you can withdraw from 1 class, from all of your classes, whatever you want to do. But once you get down to December 3rd, that's an all or nothing. You either stay in all of your classes or you withdraw from all of your classes. So that would be a situation where maybe something came up and you can no longer take your classes. You can just withdraw from all of them. Or maybe you are getting bad grades in all of your classes. You would withdraw from all of the classes that you are taking. You're not able to withdraw from just 1 class. You have to withdraw from all of them if you choose to do the complete withdrawal. You can also request to do a hardship withdrawal. That one is a little bit different. That would be if something came up in the quarter that is going to prevent you from completing the class. So maybe there's a family emergency that came up that is going to prevent you from taking final exams. So you could fill out the hardship withdrawal, and then that would be approved by somebody outside of our office to see if that is going to be approved. So there was a student that had an accident to where they got a major concussion, they broke bones in their body, and they weren't able to do exams. So that would be considered a hardship. And so it has to be an actual hardship. It can't just be that you don't like your grade in your class, you don't like your professor. That's not going to be considered a hardship. So make sure that if you are doing the hardship withdrawal, that it is an actual hardship and that you're filling out the paperwork for that to make sure that you can get the paperwork through. It is going to be better for you to have a W on your transcript than it is to get an F on your transcript. And so make sure that that doesn't happen. Like I said, that's super rare. Most of our students do super, super well in this program. December 7th through December 10th are final exams. Those are going to be a little bit different times than your normal class schedule, so you'll want to make sure you know what time those are. And then on the 10th, all classes and exams and everything are completed, and you can view your final grades on December 15th in MyCWU. And then just some advice for how to be successful at CWU. Make sure that you're checking your email every single day. Make sure that you're checking Canvas every single day. You might not be getting reminders from your professors as when things are due. So you're going to have to get that syllabus at the beginning of the quarter and follow that as if that's your schedule, unless your professor tells you otherwise. If that on there, it says that you have a paper due on November 1st, you're going to have to remember that that paper is due November 1st because you might not be getting as reminders like you would at the high school. So make sure you know your schedule, make sure you're checking your emails in case anything changes, and make sure that you're staying on top of your calendar because that's going to be the biggest way that you can fall behind is if you're not staying up to date on your assignments. So make sure that you're using a calendar to make sure that you know when all of your deadlines are. Also make sure that you take notes when you are listening to lectures. Don't just write what's on the PowerPoint, write what they are saying about the PowerPoint because most professors will give you access to their lectures that you can look at their PowerPoint. So make sure you're writing about the things that you're not going to have access to again. And so make sure you're doing good note-taking skills, that you're writing legibly, and maybe even type up your notes after you write them in class. Make sure that you're taking time to take breaks. You're going to be spending a lot more time studying than you are going to be spending time in class. So don't study for periods of just 3 hours straight. That's all you're doing is studying. Make sure that you're doing time where maybe you are studying for 45 minutes and take a 15-minute break, study for another 45 minutes, something like that to where you're giving your brain breaks so that you can retain more information. Also make sure that the phone number that is listed in MyCW is your phone number or the phone number that you want to be the primary contact. A lot of times students will have their parents' phone number on there and we will call you repeatedly if you don't sign up for advising. And some parents don't want that. And so make sure that it is the phone number that you want on there, most likely the student's phone number, so that when anybody on campus is trying to get a hold of you, that we're able to get a hold of you and able to sign you up for advising or whatever we need to do. Also make sure that your voicemail is set up because we will leave voicemails. And if your voicemail is not set up, you won't know who's calling and you won't know why we're calling. And so make sure that that is also set up on your phone before the quarter starts so that we can give you information as it comes up. If you ever need help on campus, make sure that you come to the Running Start staff first. So we're going to be the primary people that are going to be helping you get connected to resources, getting you connected to the right people on campus. You can also access your professors as resources. If there's something specific to your class, you're going to want to go to your professor. So say there's a concept you don't understand and there's something that you want to get a clarification on, you can just go up to your professor and ask them that question. They are mostly really helpful people and want you to succeed in your class. And so they're going to be a great resource if you have questions about the specific class that you're taking from them. You can also go to tutoring if you need help, and you can also ask your fellow students. You're going to be in classes with a lot of other college students. And so feel free to ask questions about them. If you're missing for a day, feel free to ask for somebody's notes that is sharing a class with you. If you ever have technology problems, make sure that you tell your professor immediately and also contact the service desk if you need to. We had a student that had technology problems all year and didn't tell anybody, so we didn't know how to help them because they never told us that they needed help. And their professor also didn't know, so as they were missing assignments and things, they were just giving them missing grades or Fs on things because they didn't know that there was a problem going on. So if you have a tech problem of any kind that is preventing you from completing your school, make sure that you are emailing your professor immediately and also contacting the service desk so that we can help you get through your problem and then hopefully get you back on track for your classes and turning things in on time. You can also do a lot of fun things on campus, like going to different events, creating study groups, and even doing fun things like we have movie nights sometimes where you can go to the Cirque and they have movies on the big theater that they have there. They have different events where there's food that's available, different events and clubs that you can go to. There's like a pre-medicine club, there's an anime club. There's a lot of different things that you can do on campus. And typically students that are involved on campus do better in their classes. So try and make friends, try to develop study groups, and go to clubs and events so that you can experience what it's like to be at CWU and do better in your classes as you do that as well. And then I'm gonna stop recording so that we can ask some questions.